so I start to write him another email. I send it, and it says blocked.
Oh my God.
Blocked. And I have like 4 different emails for him. Blocked all of them. And I just thought, what a little baby. You know, what a little baby. I had never, to this day, I've never seen an episode of The Simpsons.
That's funny.
I don't like animation. So I'm like the one person in the world that's never seen The Simpsons. And I'm writing an episode of The Simpsons. I started to get a little irritated and got to the point where I was like, look, who the are you and what do you want?
You haven't even met her, and now Cher's a pain in the ass already. You haven't even met her.
Yeah. I said, if you want to meet and go out, that'd be great. But if not, you're wasting my time.
Hello and welcome to Here's the Pitch, sponsored by Masses Restaurants in St. Louis. 5 locations, stlmasses.com is their website. If you're driving through, check out that website. You'll get directions and menus. I'm your friend Brad. Today I'm excited. Actor, writer, producer, Mr. Everything is over there. It's Ron Zimmerman, everybody. Everybody give a hand for Ron. Hello, Ron. I don't have an audience. Listen to that applause.
Yeah. Thank you, folks. Everybody, please sit down. Sit down.
Hello. So, how are things? You're out in LA in California, and I appreciate you doing this today. And we had a kind of a nice conversation yesterday. But how are things going? Any works in the works? How are things in the world of Ron Zimmerman?
Well, things are fine, sort of. I mean, I had some family shit happened last month, and that was very sad and miserable. And but you know, I'm just moving on. You know, you gotta just move on. A lot of my friends have died in the last 6 years or so.
You have to wake up and read the obits. I'm sorry about your tragedy. I know you had a personal tragedy, but
yeah. No, I mean, you know, 6 years ago, my friend Sam Simon died. You might know him from, you know, he's one of the Simpsons creators. And, he died, and my mentor guy, Chris Thompson, who created Bosom Buddies, he died. Oh, God. So there's a bunch. Just a bunch.
Well,
they're like dropping like flies.
Yeah, my mom's in her mid-70s, and she wakes up happy that there's no calls. Like, hey, oh, guess who just croaked, you know, so
right,
she's happy.
Right.
Well, I was curious, so I'm going to run through your career and talk about some of the things that you've done, and I love to start kind of early on in that you did some stand-up comedy. Tell me, just getting into stand-up comedy in the late 70s, early 80s, you were out in D.C. Tell me just a little bit about the scene there, because I know a lot of people were out in L.A. The Comedy Store was still real big then. We had that second wave, like of Robin Williams. What wave? Yeah, what did you...
I always thought of that period of time that was... I thought that was like a new vaudeville, because, you know, everywhere, every restaurant opened up a comedy club. And, you know, the amount of places you could do stand-up was just ridiculous. I mean, some of them you had to stand on a milk crate with a little microphone. Some had no microphone, but they were everywhere. And I thought this must be what vaudeville had been like. And, you know, all just gigs everywhere, you know, and the people running them, of course, knew nothing about comedy. So in its own way, it was sort of funny, but it was certainly interesting because I got to see people, when they were starting, well, I was younger than most of my peers by a few years, and so to see these people, I mean, when I first went to the Improv, the Saturday night show, which is the big show of the week for any club, the Saturday night show had only 2 comedians at the Improv, which was unheard of because the Saturday night shows like at Catch a Rising Star was, Jerry and Jay and Paul Reiser and Bill Maher and all these people. And at the Improv, it was Gilbert Gottfried, and then the only person that could follow Gilbert, Andy Kaufman. And, nobody wanted to follow Gilbert. He was so unbelievably funny and not doing what he does now. He had an act. He had a whole act that he did he did impressions. He's probably the greatest impressionist I've ever met. And so he could do impressions of, he would do Ronald Coleman and Richard Burton as the Honeymooners. And it was like the weirdest, funniest shit. I wouldn't even try to do an impression of it, but it was so hilarious. And then Andy Kaufman would come on after him and do that foreign guy thing. And, this is the John Wayne. Okay, everybody, you're under arrest. And he'd do, 7 bad impressions and then go, this is the Elvis Presley. And boy, he turned around and he took a stripe off the side of his pants. So it looked like, I don't know, tuxedo pants or something. And turned around and grabbed this guitar and combed his hair back and all this shit. And by the time he turned back around, he was fucking Elvis. And and he was so great. It was just mind-blowing.
What was your act back then? What were you doing, and why did you kind of stop the whole stand-up comedian type run?
Well, I never really liked doing it very much. I always had stage fright, and I could never do my act. I always was improvising stuff because I hated doing the same shit twice. So, they put me on and expect me to do this act, and I didn't want to, so I just started improvising other stuff.
I was gonna say, did you get to be around Larry David at that time? Because he famously would just yell at the audience and didn't really want to do it. Like he was finally just decided, I'm gonna write. I mean, I don't know if you got the chance to work with him. I know you worked with Michael Richards, so there was some sort of crossover there later. But it sounds like a Larry David story.
Well, Larry was, I guess I wasn't that different from him, except he was already gone. So he had already moved out here. But yeah, I mean, I used to get really mad at the audience and yell at them. And, unlike Larry, I picked fights sometimes. And I mean, I have kicked someone in the face that heckled me from the stage that was sitting in front. I went, come here a minute, I want to show you something. And the guy leans over, and I just kicked him in the face.
It's funny. That's a good bit.
And so I was always like in trouble at these clubs. I couldn't get the rules down, and it wasn't for me. I even when I did great, and I did great a lot of times. There were times I did so good, people would go, this guy is the next Richard Pryor. And I enjoyed those kind of compliments. And, but the actual getting up there always, I almost always used a different name when I went up, because I was scared that people would see my name in the phone book. Maybe I offended someone, and they'd see my name in the phone book and then come over to my house and kill me.
You mentioned Andy Kaufman. Did you get a chance to see him out of character, or was he always in character? I mean, did you get to ever have a conversation where it's like you're looking, because everyone has a story about him, and it's always he was on 24/7.
I did this fake telethon at the Improv one, and the telethon was I played a character named Mickey Davis Jr. And the idea was that Mickey Davis Jr. was the biggest star ever in history. And so the telethon, because Mickey Davis Jr. was such a big star, the only disease that he could, the star of his stature could go attack was death. So the whole thing was, I remember a sign we had up that said, "Hey, death, enough already." And it was, and I had a band, and a lot of people. It was mostly musicians and other comics that came to it. I did two of them, and I had my friends come up and play like other characters. Oh, look who's here, Wayne Newton. And then he'd come up for a little while, and then oh, look, Freddie Fender is here. And it was, all these different people. And so it was, I think it's on YouTube, actually.
I've heard of this name. I remember that. Was Andy part of this or no?
No, he was dating Elaine Boozler. And she came to see the show and brought him. And after the show, they invited me out for dinner. And I was like, sure. And so they took me to this place in Little Italy, and it was a real like mobbed up kind of place, way down in the Italy part, and it was downstairs, and you go down another stairs, like a secret Italian place. So they take me there for dinner, and then Andy says, "God, that was so funny." And he's talking just like a normal guy, and he says, "That was so funny." He says, "I love that character." He goes, "If you do nothing except that character everywhere you go, and every time you get on a stage, you play that character, no matter what show it is, no matter what it is, you go up there with that." I used to wear tinfoil jewelry that I'd make tinfoil, like bracelets and rings and a big belt buckle and everything. And I mean, it was ridiculous. And pretty funny, pretty hilariously ridiculous. And he said, every time you go on stage, you go on as that character, do that thing, and I guarantee you, you'll become a star. Because I absolutely guarantee it. And he said, I'll bet you $500,000. And I was like, what? And so at the time, I was sort of like, okay. You know, and Lord knows I tried. But, you know, I wasn't Andy Kaufman, and, you know, I tried, and then I got sick of doing the character and had to hang it up and try other things.
Yeah. I got to be honest. So the first time I really ever heard of you was when you started sitting in for Jackie. Jackie leaves the Stern Show, and you become the first man to ever sit in the Jackie chair after Jackie leaves. How did that come about? Were you scheduled? Because Jackie left like the week before. You come up, and now it's like, oh, Ron Zimmerman's going to be the next Jackie. Can you tell me how all of that came together back then?
Sure. Well, Howard and Jackie and Robin had I mean, if you remember the show, Jackie at a certain point, like, wasn't really like the funny guy. He was more like the Fredo of the show, where him and Robin were always fighting, and seriously, they hated each other. And so they were always fighting, and then Jackie, this was when the E Channel show was on, and Jackie felt like he deserved a cut of that, and there was all this bullshit. And Howard, who I had met when I was 17 at a comedy club in D.C., who, when I was first starting, who was, you know, Howard started his show in D.C. before I moved to New York. It was in D.C., and he came in to this club, which was near the station. He came into this club where I was first doing stand-up, and he just loved it. And afterwards, you know, he comes up and, hey, I'm Howard, and he goes, I can't believe you actually, are you for real? That's what he said to me. Are you for real? Do you really get that mad at the audience? You know, and I said, yeah, you know, fuck them, like, make me mad. And he said, you know, I play a character on my show that's kind of like what you're doing, but I'm just playing this character. You're for real. And I said, yeah, I guess I am. And so he said, you know, you want to come on the show and guest, you know, be a guest on my show. And I was like, sure. And it turns out I think I was the first stand-up that was a guest on Howard's show. And you know, that was fun, and, you know, we did it, and then we stopped doing it. But I mean, it was just like this one time. And then I stayed friends with him, and he moved to New York, and then I moved to New York, and we kept in touch, and you know, we're pretty good friends for many years. And so then Jackie quit, and Howard calls me and says, Jackie quit. I was wondering if you're not doing anything, would you come to New York and just sit in his chair? And if you feel like writing jokes, write some jokes. If you want to talk, do whatever you want. But I just need somebody in that chair, or I'm just not comfortable, And so I said, okay, and paying me. So off I went to New York to do this thing, which I was about to start working on a show, and they made me sign a gag order that I would not mention this show on the Howard Stern show, which I always thought was funny.
What was the show? Do you remember? What was the show for fun?
The show was a piece of shit that starred Joan Cusack. And somebody decided that they thought Joan Cusack could be the new Mary Tyler Moore. And no, it miles from the truth. And
well, she's great in School of Rock, which is the only thing I really think I've enjoyed her in, to be honest. But
yeah, she's horrible. And anyway, that was that. But then after about, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks or something, I said to Howard, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm really not. And part of it was, they'd have staff meetings after the shows, and I'd say, and I told him, Howard, this doesn't work, having me here, because I agree with you about everything. We're in sync about pretty much everything. And so that doesn't work, because you have like a family of characters here. And I'm not really part of that, and I'm not gonna be, because I agree with you on everything. And that's what Robin's supposed to do. And you need somebody in this chair that doesn't agree with everything. And they had tried out a few people earlier, and then Artie Lange had been a guest, and I think Gary and me both said, "What about Artie Lange?" And Howard was sort of, I don't know. It was like, come on, he's a drunk, he's crazy, he's everything you want, loves sports, you hate sports, all that shit, just like Jackie. So he hired Artie, and I thankfully went home as fast as I could.
Well, I remember early. I think you brought in some Miller Lite like the first day, right? Tom confiscated your beer.
No, what it was because it was so fucking early. I could never just wake up. You had to be there at 6 a.m. and so I used to stop and get a bottle of orange juice and a fifth of vodka, and I'd dump out half the orange juice and then pour vodka in the bottle, and then take it in, and it was like, that's just my morning orange juice. I don't want anybody. So, it did actually lighten me up a little bit and stuff. But then one day, I think it might even be the first week, the runner comes in and he's like, I'm taking breakfast orders. And I said, okay, here's my order. Come here. And I'm like, go buy a bottle of orange juice and a fifth of vodka. And I gave him money, and I was like, and then dump half out, and bring it back. Okay. Never occurring to me that the station manager, looked at everything, and the kid was so scared of his job that he told the station manager. So we're sitting there doing the show, and the station manager comes in. Yeah, I guess his name was Tom, and he says, "Hey, Howard, I want to talk to you about your big shot friend from Hollywood." And he's like, "What?" And he goes, "He's drunk." and this is on the air. And Howard goes, "No, he's not. Get out of here. Tom, go away. You're a pain in the ass." And he goes, "You don't think he's drunk?" And he reaches over and grabs my orange juice before I can grab it back. And then he hands it to Howard. He goes, "Take a little sip of that." Howard takes a sip, who doesn't drink at all. And he's like, "Oh my God, he is drunk." And he's like, "Ron, you can't do this. That's against the FCC thing. I'm going to get a fine, And I was like, "Well, nobody told me." And then this Tom guy was like, "Oh no, he's got to go." And Howard, "No, he's just not going to drink anymore on the show." And I didn't, but it was like that day. I don't know how people know what you look like from being on that show, but I was walking to the park and more than a few people stopped and went, "Hey, you're Howard's friend, the drunk, right?" Like, I guess so. Even when I came back home, people were going, "Oh, you were great on the Stern Show, especially when you were drunk."
Well, I remember when I first heard you, and I said, "This is definitely a different dynamic than Jackie's laugh." You were very dry and, well, now drunk. I learned. Tell me. So we talked beforehand. You guys aren't real tight anymore, you and Howard, right? Did something happen with the writing of Kane, or what happened to kind of end that relationship?
Oh no. Although that always has bothered me, but I should have never sold him that script. That was a stupid mistake. But at the time, it seemed like he could get it made. I didn't realize that he would go after Les Moonves with such a passion, and that Les Moonves had been promoted to the head of pretty much everything that was CBS, which included Howard's station. And it was like, somehow I felt like Howard didn't even realize that or something, but yeah, he had this pilot, and then one day, he's not a producer. He just didn't know what to do, and instead just yelled. He goes on the show, and it's like, "Les Moonves, I gave you the best script you've ever seen in your life, and you're too much of a pussy to shoot it," and it was just awful. And Les Moonves, of course, cut it. My script was so dead that when Howard went after him on the radio, it just killed my script.
Well, did that ruin your guys' relationship at that point, or was there something that came along after?
No, that wasn't it. Actually, I don't. Things happen, so I've learned. I wasn't going to blame him. Stuff. It was just one of those unfortunates. And no, it wasn't until recently that Howard and I stopped speaking or communicating, I guess. For years, I would email him every so often, and how's Beth? How are you? How's your dogs? What's going on? And he'd write back. Usually not much. Dogs are fine, Beth's fine, and that was about it. But I wrote him. Do you remember when he was on the Bill Maher show?
Yeah.
Not all that long ago. And those two never got along. And I told both of them a million times, if you ever just sat and talked, you would like each other because you're very much the same. And, neither one was. But then Howard went on his show and gave what I thought was just a wonderful interview. And, about his therapy and how it's really turned him around and all this stuff. I thought it was just great. So I wrote him a letter, an email, and said, wow, I just thought you were fantastic with Bill, and and so open and honest about your therapy, and congratulations, and you just sound terrific. I'm very happy for you. And and then the usual, how's Beth? How's the dogs? But it was kind of a beautiful letter, And he writes me back, thanks, Ron. I'm a work in progress. Period. Okay, so now I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking about all the times I've written him, how are you? What's going on? And gotten these one-sentence responses for the last few years. And so I wrote him back, and I said, Howard, you know what would be another great step in the right direction? I said, if you learn to type 3 words that would take you 2 seconds and make me feel good. And those words are, how are you? And that's what I wrote him. And then I didn't hear back for a long time. And then I thought, let me see if he even got this. So I start to write him another email. I send it, and it says blocked.
Oh my God.
Blocked. And I have like 4 different emails for him. Blocked all of them. And I just thought, what a little baby. What a fucking little baby. It's like the most easiest thing in the world to ask somebody. And certainly just manners, just manners. I don't care how rich you are. It's like, Howard, I know people richer than you. Okay, I've been with people richer than you, I spent 5 years sleeping with somebody richer than you. So, who the fuck are you? It's like Al Pacino calls me back and asks how I am. Fuck you. I didn't write all that. I didn't respond at all. Obviously, I couldn't anyway. But that's how I feel, which is just fuck you, Howard. You've been rich and famous too goddamn long, and you forgot who your real friends are. So, to hell.
Yeah, well, I thought he was in therapy. I thought he was fixing himself, but this is not. This is not seemingly the signs of someone who's right-minded.
Yeah, it's like he may be doing good with some of his stuff, some of his issues, but he certainly hasn't. gotten to the point where he gives a shit about anybody else. And that's terrible, you know. When Jackie left the show, I used to walk around the park with him. He's one of my best friends, and I, you know, he was like, I don't know what to do, and you know, what now, and all this shit. I said, Jackie, I guarantee you, come with me tomorrow morning into the studio, sit down in your chair, and start working. And just go with the old Hollywood saying, it never happened. You know, it never happened. You never quit. You haven't been gone. I just happened to be in town, and that was fun. But I said, just go back to work. He will let you. You know, he wants you to go back to work. He just wants you to swallow a little pride. Okay, you can do that. You're man enough. And just go back to work. It never happened. And he almost did it. I had him so close. And then he didn't. And that was really disappointing, you know, because I wanted to save the day, you know, and I wanted to get Jackie back on there because I thought it was silly that he wasn't, and you know, but he wouldn't do it. Too prideful.
Jackie seems happy now, though. He comes on this podcast a lot, and we tell stories and laugh and tell jokes, so I think he's doing well. You guys have been friends for a long time, too, right? So you know the joke, man. You mentioned a relationship in that story there, that 5-year. You asked me, are you going to talk about Cher? And I said, well, I mean, I'm sure you get that question a lot, but that is so interesting that this part of your life is in your part of your life, right? And the Facebook connection, and what were you like? I can't fucking believe this. Well, you did. You said, I can't believe it's fucking Cher. And then it was finally Cher, right? And then it started to actually go okay. She liked you, right? I mean, that she really enjoyed your comedic timing over writing first, right? And that's how it sort of started for you guys?
Sort of, yeah. We were both on Facebook, and she was using a different name, obviously.
What was it?
And
no, I'm kidding.
Actually, it was just Cher Believe. So I figured that was a phony name for a Cher fan, right? And I wasn't into Cher, you know. I wasn't like looking to meet Cher. If I had to make a list of every famous woman I would like to have met and had a relationship with, she would not have been on the list. Seriously. You know, I was never a big fan, you know. I mean, I thought too talented, but when I was a kid growing up, I loved Sonny. I thought Sonny Bono was the funniest guy on TV when I was growing up. And I just loved him. And I didn't care about, you know, brunettes. I never was that into, you know, and her little outfits and all that. None of it did much for me, but Sonny I thought was hilarious.
So if he would have caught you on Facebook, maybe that would have worked. I don't think so, but
yeah. So I had I wrote something on this woman's page, Lori Rodkin. She's a famous jewelry designer, and she's our best friend. So I wrote something on there that Cher read and thought was funny. So then she looked at my, my page, right? And on my Facebook page, it said religious beliefs. and it said, "That's between me and Zeus." She thought that was like the funniest thing in the world, and was like, "Who is this guy? That is so funny." And then her friend, said, "My friend is interested in you, and write her back, or not write her, and friend her and stuff." And she thinks you're very funny. So I wrote her back, but I decided not to look on the inside at the photos. On Facebook there's a thing, photos, and you can go inside and see all the pictures. Well, I decided that I was going to be more mature than usual, and there was just a little tiny picture of a woman, and there was a mountain behind her, and she had a cowboy hat and glasses on, and long black hair, and it looked like Cher, but a lot of women dress up like, it's not uncommon, so the first few days we were writing back and forth. I thought she was a Cher. She was like, maybe, she said she worked in Vegas but lived here. And so like I said, it's still not occurring to me that it's Cher. So now I think, God, I'm writing this woman who works in Vegas and has to come back here every, geez, maybe she's having a hard time, I'm not sure. Then I thought she probably does one of those, celebrity impersonator shows in Vegas and then comes back during the week. So, and then I kept writing this Lori woman going, "Come on, who is this? Is this somebody I should know? What's the deal?" And she's writing me back going, "What are you, an idiot? How do you not know who you're talking to?" And I said, "We've been best friends for 35 years. Okay, well, I've been best friends with a lot of people for 35 years. Who is it? She said, "Oh, come on. Seriously?" And so now it's like 3 days, and I still don't know. Now I think she's a Cher impersonator that is kind of having rough times. And so I write her and say, "Hey, listen, it sounds like maybe you're going through something. I have an extra guest room in my house. If you just need, if you want to, have a place to live, I won't charge you rent, but just help me keep the place clean, whatever." And I said, "But if you need some kind of help like that, let me know." And she writes me back, "Well, that's very nice, but actually, I have a little house here in Los Angeles." And it's like, and then I started to get a little irritated, and got to the point where I was like, "Look, who the fuck are you, and what do you want? Because I can't do all these we literally had been staying up 4 nights in a row."
So you haven't even met her. And now Cher's a pain in the ass already. You haven't even met her.
Yeah. And so I say, "If you want to meet, I say, if you want to meet and go out, that'd be great. But if not, you're wasting my time. So, and I don't really have time to waste on this shit. And this was like 4 a.m, and then my phone rings, and a voice that is obviously instantly recognizable comes on the phone and says, I hope you're a good writer because you never make it as a private detective. And then I knew who it was. And I was like, hey, wait a minute. And I literally said, you're Cher. Like Sonny and Cher. And she just goes, again, don't become a private detective. So we talked all night. But then I did say, listen, either we meet or we stop doing it. So she invited me over she had an apartment in the city. She invited me over to her apartment like the next night. And I went over there and opened the door, and sure enough, it was Cher. And I have met people and been more starstruck in my life here. But it was interesting and cool, and she was very cool. She dressed cool and just had like jeans and a t-shirt on. She was cool. And we sat in the living room and talked for hours and hours. And really, we stayed together. Right after that, we weren't apart for like a couple of years. And had a great time. Had a wonderful time. Laughs. We used to have great laughs and stuff. And she's like me. She doesn't like to leave the house much. So that was good. So we didn't have to go out too much. And we stayed together. We fought a lot, but always ended up back together. And I think she's a great gal. I don't know. Is she the most empathetic person I've ever met? No. Is she the kindest person I've ever met? No. But she has a lot of really great qualities. And, she takes care of her mom and her sister. And she does good things, those elephants and stuff that she saves. And she's got 2 schools in Africa somewhere that she finances. So, she does good things and stuff, but it just wore out after, like 4 years. It just started to wear out, But then I had a situation come up where I was ill for a while, and I had been on the road, and I didn't know. I came back here, and then I got back here, and I was like, uh-oh, I forgot one thing. I don't have a place to live. I got rid of everything when I left. And, so she gave me her guest house for a year, and we weren't together, just to be nice and recover and stuff. And that was very sweet. So it's not like she couldn't be sweet. She just wasn't always,
Is the house full of awards like Oscars of Moonstruck and Grammys and Crazy Velvet. Like I just see a lot of pomp and circus.
Nothing like that. Nothing like that. She's like, you know, the awards, the Oscar, Emmy, Tony, Grammy are all in a, you know, like a wood case up sort of in the room before her bedroom. And they're just in a wood case, and, you know, they're there, you know.
Well, how do you handle that lifestyle? Because at this point now you're followed by paparazzi, right, all the time. But you said you stayed home a lot, so there probably wasn't a lot of that. But how did that affect you? Did it affect you at all? Did you care? I mean, there had to be keep cameras every time she went out. You guys went out.
Yeah, it was you know, it was like, I didn't care so much, but I knew she did, and you know, it was I felt terrible for her. I felt just terrible for her, you know, that she couldn't even go out to the simplest kind of thing, you know, and without being besieged. And plus, you know, nowadays everybody's got a telephone with a camera in it. So she just, you know, she had like no privacy. And so I still feel terrible for her. That actually, I feel worse for her now because, you know, our birthdays are a few days apart, and I know she just turned 75. And I'm sure it's even worse now, you know, and so, yeah, I mean, I always felt awful for her about that because she's very insecure and, you know, she's really a good looking woman without any makeup or anything. She's a good looking woman. And she was 10 years, I met her about 10, 11 years ago, so she was 64. But I mean, she's just a beautiful, beautiful woman. And, you know, but to go, every time you go out, to have people, you know, running at you with those fucking, their iPhones and their cameras. And I mean, one time we went, I'm a comic book guy, so I took her to a comic book store in Santa Monica. And of course, the paparazzi, somebody told them and found out, and we left there, and they followed us like all through. I was like trying to lose them through Santa Monica and going up these streets. She's like, come on, lose them. And you know, I couldn't, because there was more than one car, and there were, you know, so we just went straight back to her place, and, you know, the gate, and get in the gate, and that's it. But I think that would be a very difficult way to live.
Did you have to work at this time, or did you just sort of hang out and watch her do her thing, eat bonbons while she's touring? That's what I would do.
No, I was working on let's see. Well, when I first met her, I wasn't working, and then I did start working on this show a friend of mine created, and so I did that. That's what screwed us up more than anything, actually, because I had to go from like Malibu to downtown LA every day. And that's like a 30-mile ride. And some days I kept my house in Studio City here, and so some days I just I can't make it, gotta go home, gotta go to my house, and that we drifted apart starting there. even though she wanted me to work, you know. And then after that show, we sold a pilot. We sold a pilot to some bullshit network that MTV owned or something. And I had this idea, and she loved it. And so we went and pitched it and sold it. And then, of course, I ended up writing most of it. And but she had some good ideas, and then finished. And by the time we finished, the network we had sold it to, MTV, had completely, like one of those old Pac-Man things. Here's our network, and the thing just went, dong. And it was like, okay, we're done. Where's the network? Where are we supposed to send this? There is no network anymore. So, you know, I was like, the fuck? You know, and too bad. It was really a good piece. And I would have loved to have made it, but she, of course, gave up on it after that one thing, because that's sort of, she's kind of like that, yeah. You know. And I was like, we could sell this at 1 million places. And now, I mean, shit, we could really sell it at 1 million places. But that ain't her, you know. So I don't know. I haven't talked to her in a long time, a couple of years. Texted a few times. No, anything.
Not sending in any pics, no dick pics or anything like that. We're not doing that, right?
No. I mean, I do think of her as, if I ever got into like serious medical trouble, I would call her. You know, and I believe that she would like, you know, show up for that. She was always very good about, you know, you need a colonoscopy. You need this. You know, she's very, very good about health, you know. So, you know, and you know, she's, I'll tell you one thing I learned about her that and this is just from listening to her practice and then watching her last tour. I just saw the show at the Staples Center, but that bitch can sing. I'll give her that bitch can sing her ass off when she wants to. You know, when she gets away from those, do you believe in life? All that shit. When she sings a real song, like a ballad or something, she can sing. You know, and I mean, is probably one of the great singers, because that voice is so recognizable. But she can really sing it.
Well, you know, I believe you.
Yeah, I you know, and I really like that about her. You know, that she did have that gift, and then she read a script of mine when we were first together, and she was terrified to read my stuff because she thought, I like this guy so much. What if I hate his writing? But then I'm going to hate him. And so she, you know, it took her a while. And then when she finally did read the script that I gave her, she was like, oh my God, I love this. You're the funny, you know, and then just went nuts. And so it was like, I'm so relieved. I'm so relieved you're as talented as I thought you were. And so that was funny.
Well, I got to say, I got a million other questions, but we've gone an hour here. I would love to, maybe we'll do a part 2. I have so many other things I need to ask you about, Ron, and I hope you enjoyed this.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to Jodie Foster and my stepkids.
Well, let's talk about Morgan because, well, yeah, and you didn't even mention the Marvel stuff. I mean, people want to hear you talk comic books, I'm sure. So we'll save that. Yeah. We'll save that for next time. But Morgan, tell us a little bit about Morgan, what he's up to, because I know you're very proud of Morgan Krantz and his works lately.
Yes, I sure am. Morgan is, I guess, sort of my stepson, and he, he lived with me for 5-6 years alone. I mean, just me and him, and he I couldn't get him to go to school when he was a kid. He wouldn't go to school, and I'd say, "Come on, go to school," and he'd go, "Why? I want to do what you do, and you never went to school." So, no, hard to fight that one. So I let him not go to high school, and I taught him how to write scripts and how to cold read auditions and whatever it was he was interested in. I taught him how to do it as best I could. Just pretty good. I'm a very good teacher of this stuff. And he and every like 2 months I would have him write like as a what do you call it, at the end of a semester,
theme paper. I can't. Yeah, syllabus.
Yeah, like the term paper.
Term paper. That's it.
And I would make him write a script, like beginning, middle, and an end, and it has to be 40 pages, and he would do it. He would do it, and then I'd go through it with him and say, there's this and that, this and that. And also I was working a lot back then, so I always hired him onto the jobs I was working on. So he saw how scripts were rewritten in the writer's room. And then he saw how the production was done, and I would give him jobs in different parts of the production, set carpenter, whatever, wardrobe, anything. I just wanted him to learn everything, because that's what this guy Chris Thompson did with me. He said, I'm going to teach you every job so you can always get a job working in this business, So fortunately, Morgan didn't need to learn all that shit, and he started writing scripts once he was off on his own right away, and then he'd get his friends and they'd shoot him. So he has a bunch of short films to his credit before he did anything, and then he's a good-looking kid, so he had one film, I think it was a feature that he was trying to get money for, but he did one of those fancy like Gap underwear ads or something to raise money to make his movie. And I mean, the stuff he's done to raise money is incredible anyway. And now, we'll skip to now, he's just starting casting on his new feature film. And last year, he did a short called Squeegee that you can see on YouTube that got into the South by Southwest Festival, which I'm told is very hard to get into. And he got it in there, and it's a great little film if you want to see something for 10 minutes that is just something you would never think of in a million years. And it's very, very good. And he's one of the co-stars of this series that's on. They just they're just starting showing the third season now on the CW, but they have a deal with Netflix so that it runs twice on the CW and then goes to Netflix. So kids probably making plenty of money. But so the first 2 seasons are on Netflix, and I guarantee anybody that watches this show, you'll get hooked on this and binge it because it's just great. It's just great.
Well, we'll tell you're proud, and we'll definitely look for it. Yeah.
What?
So I can tell you're proud, and I'm sure, hopefully, our fans here will definitely. Do you know the name of it?
In the Dark.
That's right. You told me that. You said that. That's right.
In the Dark. And it's really good.
Yeah. Well, I had one more question for you, and then we can talk anything else. But I just had to ask you about the writing of a Simpsons episode, because you did do that in your career. I don't know if that was a Sam Simons sort of tribute thing, because I know Sam worked there. This happened in 2017. It's called Cat in the Hat. Just give me that process of how did you get selected? How did you wrote one show, but not many people in this world get to say they wrote a Simpsons, the longest running sitcom of all time. What's the pressure like to know that shit, this is a big show. I don't want to be a guy that doesn't have people laugh at the shit I'm writing for The Simpsons.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because I was going through a really bad time emotionally and psychologically, and I was gonna have a treatment for depression. I have a mental illness of depression, and so I was going into the hospital for a long treatment, and I started writing it. I called Al Jean. I just wanted to do one more thing in case I died from this treatment or I had no brains left. So I just wanted to do one more thing, and I couldn't really think of anybody. So I called Al Jean, and who I had remembered was a fan of my comic books, because I saw him at Sam's house, and he was talking about the Rawhide Kid and that he liked my comics. So I called Al Jean and said, "Hey, can I write a Simpsons?" And he said, "Sure." He goes, "Come up with a story I've never heard in 28 years, and you're welcome to do it." And damned if the first story I came up with, they had never done. And he was shocked, he was like, "Well, you got me," because we have not done that. And I said, "Okay." So he goes, "Start writing, turn it in. We'll get you my assistant will call you and get your info and all this shit." So I started writing it, and then I had to go into the hospital, and I was getting I was getting ECT, which is electroconvulsive shock therapy. And I started it and somehow managed to finish that script with a head full of electricity like you can't believe. And somehow I wrote the second act in the hospital while my brain was fried into, scungili. And I don't know. I don't even remember writing. I remember writing the beginning. I don't remember writing the end.
You just sit down at a typewriter. I mean, I'm not obviously in that business. I work in local TV, but it's you just kind of have to have a plot, a B plot, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, right? And you have to kind of make sure it just.
Well, on a sitcom, it's less acts, so it's less. I mean, it can be 2 acts, and it's fine. And I think mine was 3. But, I don't like a lot of acts, but I got. I don't know. People will see this. I'll probably end up in trouble, but I'm always. When Al gave me the job and I had pitched him the story, even though Sam was one of my best friends in the world, I had never, to this day, I've never seen an episode of The Simpsons. That's funny. I don't like animation. So I'm like the one person in the world that's never seen The Simpsons. And I'm writing an episode of The Simpsons. And the only characters I know are Homer, Bart, Lisa, and Mom. And so, if you saw the episode, you'll see like there's the boss doesn't show up. The only person, and when I was into it, somebody said, the grandpa lives there too. I was like, really? Oh, fuck. And so I put like one thing in where the grandpa just sort of runs through and says a joke, and that's it.
Well, they have 5 kids, or 3 kids too. So where's Maggie?
Oh,
Isn't their 3rd kid Maggie? I think I don't watch a lot of Simpsons either, but I believe her name's Maggie. Isn't it the 3rd kid? The little one that's always the baby. She's maybe I'm wrong. I'm thinking of
mine. I think you're right. I just forgot. I just didn't know. I didn't know about her.
That's hilarious.
And they didn't put her in it as far as I can remember. And I don't think so. The thing I liked about it was I had like you're supposed to. I had an A story and a B story, and the A story was Lisa finds a magic hat, and when she wears this hat, everybody loves her. It's like she feels better. Her whole life changes because of what I called in the thing, Sonny the Sun Hat. And Bart is so jealous that she's got this hat that makes everybody like her that he steals it and hides it somewhere, and now Lisa is inconsolable because her hat's gone and she can't bear it. She's crying and all this shit. And then Bart Simpson, for the first time, which I'm surprised about, but Bart Simpson, for the first time in his life, feels guilt. And what I wrote was a little different than what they did. They made it a little more silly, I thought, but same basic, that guilt comes to Bart when he's asleep. And they made it like he's a big monster, like the Hulk, and I had it where he's just sort of a scarier thing. But he feels guilt and he has to go and eventually, get the hat back, which I think he hid in a dog house, so he gets all torn apart by a dog and then shows up with the hat. But the thing that I learned from my mentor was, when you're writing a script, is your A story. You have to make your A story impenetrable. If you're writing an outside script for a show that you're not on the staff of, or even a movie that you know is going to get rewritten, if you make your A story impenetrable, then the most they can rewrite you is on the B story, because they can't mess with the A story because it'll screw up the whole thing and they'll have to rewrite it. They'll have to write a whole new script. So as long as your A story is tight, and the A story of this was Lisa with Sonny the Sun Hat, and there was just no way around it, because Bart feels guilt. They could have had Bart feel a lot of things. They could have written a lot of stuff. But, that's what it was, because they couldn't penetrate Sonny the Sun Hat. And that's what I've learned. I always try to teach Morgan and his little sister, because she's writing now too. You gotta make that A story impenetrable. And then no matter how many people rewrite you, you're still gonna see your own stuff in it. And I had a movie script got sold years ago, rewritten at least 15 times by 15 very good screenwriters. And I got hold of the rewrite once, never could get through into the A story. They wrote around it, up and down it, every which way they could, but they could not break into the A story. And I personally, I think that's the best lesson anybody can learn as a script writer.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. I have so much more to ask you, but we've gone long enough for both of us, I think. Okay. I've enjoyed it. Unless we could go all night, I think, but no, that was I think that's a great lesson. And like I said, there's so many things that you've done, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. So hopefully we can do this again. We'll give it a couple months, and I'll give you a shout again, and you'll be like in my rotation of like Jackie Martling. He comes on every 6.
Oh, 7. Good! I want to be with Jackie. Yeah,
maybe we'll get you both.
It'd be fun to do one of these with Jack.
That might be the next thing we do. We get you and Jackie together and just let you guys tell some jokes and tell some writer stories. So
we talk all the time.
Well, Ron, again, this was great, and like I said, I have so much more, and we just covered the very small part. But I hope you're doing well. It seems like you're doing okay, and you talked about.
Glad you are. You seem to be doing okay too.
Well, I feel all right. I wish I had a better hairdo, but what can you do?
Me too.
You look good.
I wish I had more hair. Period.
Well, thank you, Ron. That's Ron Zimmerman. Again, he'll be on again. I appreciate him joining me here, and here's the pitch. Again, sponsored by Masses Restaurants, 5 locations, stlmasses.com. That's going to do it for today's show. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.